everyone, welcome to the Movieception Show. My name is Fariba, and today, let's talk about Creed 3 because it is the latest Rocky/Creed film that's now in theaters this weekend, and I finally got the chance to see it a couple days ago and really just process it. So yeah, there's a lot to really kind of consider what this film is going to be about, especially kind of the stakes of it, because for one thing, this is Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut, so there's a lot of questions about whether or not he's capable of really kind of taking charge of a really, really big movie, part of a really big franchise, and can he really put his own kind of touch into this film, as well as whether or not, this is a film that will be worth being an addition to what is sort of this Creed universe, as well as a Rocky universe, right? And so in this case, we do have a story about what is a far more personal story between not just Creed, but also his childhood best friend Damian. And we see throughout this film that this film doesn't really become just its own sports film itself. Like, this isn't just a sports film, but this becomes more about a movie about friendship, a film that is trying to deal with some sort of revenge, as well as taking on kind of this unfinished business of sort. Now, in this film, we do see throughout kind of just this intensity between what we get from Adonis and Damian, right? And that becomes a really big part of what this film is going to be about, how it's going to kind of lead up to sort of the final act of this film. And overall, I think that this is a film where, because of all the creative decisions, kind of the build up to kind of what we get to the final act, I really did enjoy it. Like, I was kind of surprised with the fact that this film wasn't just solely focused on its sports element, because that is what the Rocky franchise is known for. The Rocky franchise is known about, having some sort of underdog story, having some sort of element where we're going to have a redemption or a montage of all these, practices, just seeing how whether it be Rocky or Creed having, their own montage of prepping or practicing or training for a fighting sequence and building up to kind of this final fight. And of course, we do get this final fight, but in this film, things are far more personal, things are far more nuanced in what it's trying to set up, what the meaning is in setting up this final fight scene between Damian and Adonis. It isn't just about, oh, we're going to have another fight and we're going to see who can win. No, this is a film about, trying to address a friendship, trying to address this underlying tension, this underlying problem that's happening between two characters, and having to resolve that matter by the end of the film, which may require having to do some boxing, right? And so in this film, I really appreciate how it has a much more underlying message, a lot more underlying theme going on in this film that really kind of sets up what it's trying to do by the end of this film. And I think a lot of that is being complimented towards Michael B. Jordan. Like, you can see the passion he puts into this project, trying to make sure that the story, the characters are the big part, are the overarching, the big elements of what this film is about. This film is very character driven. This film is about trying to understand Adonis's mentality right now, how he's feeling as not just a retired fighter, not just as a father, but also not just as a manager, but also just a former friend who now has to deal with this really big issue that's now kind of all over his shoulders, and now he needs to deal with that. And we see that throughout this film, kind of where Adonis is feeling from beginning to the end, how he needs to resolve his matters, what he needs to focus on. And that becomes a really big part of what this film is. And I think that because of that, we really see that this is a true Creed film, right? Like, again, when we are looking into the Creed film itself, we're thinking about Rocky. We're thinking about, oh, Rocky is the one who really sets up who Creed becomes later on. I mean, that's what happens in the first film. We kind of see kind of this shadow of it happening in the second film, but this is a film that we do see Creed being a Creed film. This is about Creed, and not just about Creed, but also with Damian, because this is with this film, we really see how this film does such a great job of really setting up the antagonist. And I think that a lot of it's because of the writing, a lot of it's direction, as well as the performances by Majors. This film really does such a great job of setting up who the antagonist is, allowing us to know who Dame is, that is played by Majors, kind of understanding his mentality, how things have happened to him, what happened because of the fact that, he was in prison for so long that his dream never really got to be the way he had wanted to be, whereas Adonis, the antithesis of who, Damon wanted to become, just seeing how Adonis, Creed, had that lifestyle that, Damon would have dreamed of, and how it was Adonis who had a much more fruitful, much more accomplished lifestyle compared to Damon. And we do see this comparison throughout this film, where this film isn't just about boxing. This is a film about friendship, looking into that dynamic of that friendship, and not just doing something again, but just, again, setting up this rivalry, and doing so in a way that it at least these pieces in with bringing in the sports element, but the main part of this film is about this friendship. And not just this friendship, but also kind of this development that we see of Creed, his story, how this is a film where we see where he needs to do his things on his own and not having to bring in Rocky to really just set up the pacing of it all. And I think that this film does such a great job of just doing that, trying to set itself apart from the Rocky series, as well as just becoming its own thing, that Creed can be his own character, and doing so in a way that he has his own matters to settle, how he has his own, issues to deal with his best friend. And I think that in this film, right, again, the big part is a friendship. And for that to really work out in a big movie like this, that dynamic has to be there. And the chemistry between, Jordan and Majors is incredible. We see the tension. We see the intensity between these two friends. We see how things kind of develop. We see their backstories. We see how, again, how things worked out differently between these two characters, how Damian had this much more hellish life, whereas, Adonis, because he did escape from what happened in their own incident so many years ago, that things turned out much better for him, where he does become this, well-renowned fighter. And again, we see this contrast become a big part of it, and just seeing this development between these two characters and how that plays a big part of who these characters are. And again, the chemistry between Majors and Jordan, it's just incredible. Like, it cannot work out without that. And they do such an incredible job of just setting that pacing up, and again, building up to what is the final act, where by the time you get to the final act, you are really kind of putting your attention to the big screen and seeing how things work out. Who's going to win? Who's not going to win? How are these two guys going to, settle their matters on the big screen? And I mean, it was just incredible for what you get out of this, final outcome of this film. Again, from the direction that we get from Jordan. Like, for one thing, I remember watching a lot of his interviews and how he kept on mentioning anime and how he had a lot of anime influence in this film. And it's very clear that the anime influence is there. When you get to the final act, the final fight in the final act of this film, like, there is this one sequence where it is just the two of them. And it's just, there's no crowd, it's just silence, but you can feel the intensity that is being exuded from the screen when you are seeing these two characters face to face. You can see how powerful the scene is, just the energy that you're getting at. Like, wow, like, it's just them two, it's silent. But you can feel the intensity, you can feel the buildup of the anger that each character is dealing with in their own sort of way. And just seeing that void scene was probably the most memorable moment from this film, because it's just not just really a creative take, but it really does a really powerful impact of setting up what this friendship feels like, the mentality that these characters are dealing with. And again, just the fact that you can really sense the passion that you're getting out of Jordan for really setting up this direction. Like, you can get that throughout this film. And I think that this film does such a great job of really just setting up the pieces that I feel like once you do get to the final act, it becomes worth it. It becomes a satisfying conclusion to what is basically the overarching not just the Rocky series, but really just the Creed series that, finally shows the identity of who Creed is. That, this is a film, this is a subplot of, like, a sub franchise of the Rocky series, that it can be its own thing and not just having to always be associated with Rocky. Because this film does not have Sylvester Stallone reprising Rocky. He's not in this film. I think this is the first time he has not played Rocky, and therefore, like, there was always a question of, can this film survive without Sylvester Stallone? I think it's pretty clear that that is possible. And I think a lot of that is, again, the fact that we do get this passion from Jordan, just really making sure the story, the fantasy, the dynamic, the writing, the characters are the face of what this film is about, not just the fact that this is a sports film. Yeah, I think when it comes to sports film, when it comes to Rocky, the Rocky series made it sort of, sports film like commonality nowadays. Like, it's because of Rocky that we have all these sports films nowadays. We always get this story about the underdog. We always get this story about challenges, the obstacles, the rivalries that we have to deal with, whether it be through the original film or the sequels. And we did kind of get that in the first two Creed films, that we get the underdog story and the rivalry of it. But what this film does, it really kind of deviates a little bit from what is the tropes of the sports films. It doesn't do the typical things like rivalry, obstacles, revenge stories. I mean, this film does have revenge aspects, but it's not because of the sports itself. It's more because of the friendship part of it. And I think that this film does a really great job of just becoming its own identity, becoming its own thing, where, the sports element is still important, but it's just a bit more of setting up what is the overarching element of what this film is going to be about, rather than just being the main aspect of this film. The sports element, it's not the main aspect of this film. The main aspect of this film is friendship. And it's just that we have this, boxing thing being interwoven into what is going to be this film. And again, just showing again that because of Adonis's history with boxing, the fact that this has been a part of his life, that this is one of the reasons why it plays a big part of, it just sets up this overarching idea of what this film is going to be about. And again, just the way that they really set up the characters becomes a big part of it. And now, this isn't the perfect film, as I mentioned before. There are some things that I wish it could have been far more focused on, because there were some parts of the subplot that I think that were a bit more, underdeveloped, like with Bianca and Amira. Like, it starts out really strong. It gives you an idea of who Adonis is, where he's feeling right now, where he is as of the moment, and how because of things that are happening in as a father, as his side as a father, that it kind of alludes to what's going on more so with his own friendship with Damian. Because in one aspect, we do see in this film where Amira is having her own personal issues, and how we kind of seeing how Adonis is dealing with that as a father, and like giving this message of whether or not, you need to defend yourself and how you do so, whether you have to show the power of it, trying to show more control over it. And again, we see this illusion of this being set upon on the big screen, where, not the big screen, but this sort of this overall main storyline between Damian and Adonis, and how that's being alluded to the final act, how he's trying to exemplify what to do in his situation, and how that's kind of, kind of this illusion that we get early on in this film. Although I feel like that part of the film that we get early on, that subplot, doesn't really get as resolved by the end of the film. It's not as if Amira and Bianca aren't a big part of what this film is, but I feel like their side characters weren't as well developed. I wish their story could have been far more enhanced, as well as having some sort of satisfying conclusion. Although by the end of the film, we do get this really heartfelt moment between all of them. And it does just feel like a really cute moment, but I wish there could have been far more substance in their own buildup. And I think that, but again, I think when it comes to just this whole main focus, this film is clearly about Adonis and Damian. That becomes a really big, clear moment. And I think that when we are looking at performances, Jonathan Major, once again, he's playing another main villain, or I would say just antagonist, but another big antagonist in this film, second time go around. Not even been 3-4 weeks since we've seen him play Kong, and he's already making a big impact as Damian. And I think this one, he really shows a really strong performance, this rawness that we get out of Damian. The fact that in a sense, when we do kind of discover his backstory, you do empathize with him. You do understand what he's feeling. We understand why he's so angry, why he wants vengeance, why he's here now and wants to claim the glory that he wanted when he was a kid, and now he wants to claim that back for himself. And I think that plays a big part of what this film is going to develop. And I think that, again, the performance that we get from Majors is just incredible. I think that this is a far better antagonist story that we get from, or antagonist performance that we get from Majors than we get from Kong, because again, there is a bit more of that emotional, personal touch that, that not just that we get from the issues with the his Kong, in what we get from Kong, but in this film, again, it plays a big part of really setting itself as a whole different film that isn't just, again, a sports film, but really kind of focusing on the friendship dynamic between Adonis and Damian. And I think this is a film that really screams that this is a film about Adonis and Damian. It's really clear. We get that from start to finish. This isn't about Creed has to deal with another rival, a long-term rival, or somebody that Rocky may have known. No, this is a film that it is about Creed. It is about him. It is his identity. It is about setting up his backstory. And really, again, just what we really get by the end piece, it's just phenomenal. This is a really great addition to the Creed film. We're warranted that there are some issues, like some characters just not being as well developed as I would have wanted them to, but also there are some pacing issues here and there. But the fact that it is able to do its own thing, trying to be more creative in a sense, again, just the passion that you get from Jordan's, directorial debut, it's evident, and you can see it throughout this film. It's exemplified with how he puts in his creative take into this film, trying to make sure that the writing is the main part of what this film is going to be, not just because it is another sports boxing film. This is a film about, the nuances of kind of what's happening, the contrast between characters, and how they're selling their own business onto the big screen. And just, again, the action scenes that we do get, we only get two, big boxing matches, as well as the fact that there are a couple of scrimmages here and there, but when you do see the action stuff, again, it's pretty incredible seeing kind of the shots that we do get, but also that void scene and the final fight was incredible. I think that void that we get between the two is really powerful, very dynamic, it's just, again, the chemistry that we're getting between Jordan and Mages is what really is a big factor into why this film is so good. Again, like, I feel like I really did enjoy overall what we do get from Creed 3, because, again, just setting up this film, that this isn't just another sports film, but this is a film that really kind of shows a bit more of the nuance of what's going on. Just a personal touch of it just makes this a far more empathetic, a far more, juicier film, something that's really intense and what's happening with the characters, and really doing so in a way that is so well developed, and also allowing it to, bring these elements together, that it's done so in a way that's very organic. Because, again, it's still a sports film where we do see the boxing elements, but, again, doing so in a way that where we do get the personal lives of who these characters are, it fits organically into the bigger, aspect of this film, which is, again, the final fight that we get by the end of this film. And it turns out great, and it becomes a really satisfying outcome and what we get as, like, the final product. So yeah, that's all really to say about Creed 3. Again, I mean, I totally recommend seeing it. I would probably give this film a 3.5, maybe even 4 stars, just because it's a very good, strong direction from Jordan. I think, again, there are some things I wish could have been a bit more better with some of the characters, and I think that there is some pacing issues here and there, but overall, just kind of the themes that we do get in this film, just kind of the build up to the final scene, the dynamic. I mean, again, I'm telling you, this film is literally about Damian and Adonis. This is their film. Like, you can get that, and you get the sense of the antithesis of who these characters are, their dynamic, their chemistry, the performance from the actors. It all works out, and I feel like that's what really makes this a really strong addition to not really just the Rocky series, but the Creed series. And who knows, like, given kind of what happens in the film, this could really lead up to other things, and kind of setting up a whole, universe of not just Rocky, but just this whole boxing world that has been a big part of, entertainment culture for a long time, like, I think even 40 plus years. And this film really proves itself that it can be far more than just being Rocky. It doesn't have to be a shadow of Rocky. It can be its own film. And I feel like that's what it really works out by the end of the day. And I think that Jordan does a really great job on his Directorial debut, showing his own vision, showing his own creativity, his own touch, as well as, really just making sure the characters are the main focus, and not just the themes, just the tropes, nothing of that sort. Like, and I think that really works out by the end of the day. And I think that this is a great addition to Creed, and I can't wait to see more of, not just from what we get, if there is going to be more films, but more from Jordan when it comes to any other additional films that he does end up directing. So that's all I have to say about Creed 3. Again, I definitely worth the watch. If you have not seen it, go to theaters right away, because I think for one thing, I saw it in Dolby, and just to feel those punches, that was a pretty cool, feeling throughout the film. Like, that was just a pretty additional great touch, a really great experience for it. So if you have not seen it, definitely recommend it in Dolby if you haven't already. If you have, what are your thoughts overall? Did you enjoy this film? Did you not? What do you think about Michael B. Jordan's director debut? What do you think about the performances? What do you think about the dynamic between Adonis and Damian? Do you think it worked out? Do you think this film still needed Sylvester Stallone as Rocky, or did it finally establish itself as its own identity and it worked out in the long run? Do we think that we're going to have more sequels, or even more of like an overarching spin-off, given what has happened throughout this film, like some of the things that we do get here and there? And just let me know what your thoughts overall. Let me know in the comments down below, and make sure to like and subscribe.